Hey, I'm excited. And we're live.
Yeah, I guess we are.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, hello, everyone.
And welcome to another episode of NPL Live. With our special guest this week, Michael Lang, director of Kansas Talking Books. And we'll just get right into it. And I'll start with some upcoming events and announcements that we've got going on. So tonight is the mystery book discussion at 5 o'clock, and we'll be discussing The Silent Corner by Dean Koontz. If you're watching and you would like to join us, just send us an email and we'll get you the room invite information. Tomorrow night at 7, we will have Michael Ross joining us to discuss his new book, The Search, which is the second book in his series Across the Great Divide, which is a historical fiction series on the Civil War. And then Saturday, the 6th, we have our teen book discussion over The Hero's Guide to Saving Your Kingdom by Christopher Healy. On Thursday, the 11th, we have Nathan's Tech Talk, which is thinking about becoming a cord cutter. So getting rid of your cable and going to the streaming services and what all of that means. That'll also be a donation day. So if you have any materials you want to donate to the library, you can come that day to donate things. We are asking people to limit their donations to a couple boxes as to help us save on some space. But we would really appreciate those donations because on March 20th, we will be having a book sale outside where you can come pick up some books to read, and all of the proceeds go to support the library and our programming. And then on Thursday, the 18th, we will have our third Thursday book discussion over Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grain. And our discussion leader that night will be Stephanie, who works here at the library. And I will let Sam tell you about the really exciting genealogy and history program we have on the 16th.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. On the 16th, we have John Brown, Image versus Reality, and that's going to be a Zoom program like everything else, of course. And that is with Grady Atwater, who he is the administrator of the John Brown Museum State Historic Site in Osawatomie. So he knows a lot about John Brown, and I think John Brown's been, the Good Lord Bird miniseries came out this year, and I was thinking that a lot of people probably watch that, and there might be some interest in how the history is the same or different. So really excited that Grady's going to join us. And then a week after that, on the 23rd, is our monthly photography program. This one is with Jenny Gegg, and she is a professional photographer who lives in Nebraska. She's going to talk to us about portrait photography and how to take good, like, family photos and stuff like that. So everybody's invited to those. And you can go on our Facebook to find out how to get the Zoom link or sign up for the webinars, all that good stuff.
All right. So Sam, what have you been reading lately?
Well, I just recently started, let me see, what have I just finished? I just started rereading The Magicians by Lev Grossman, which is, I think I first read it like 6 or 7 years ago, and I was just feeling like, I'm in a rereading mood, I guess. So I felt like, I'll just read it again. I've got the audio book going at the same time, so I kind of switch back and forth depending on whether or not I'm in my car. And I think it's been described a lot as Harry Potter for grown-ups. It's kind of, there are parts of it that are kind of, it's got a compelling plot and it's emotional. It's not just a satire, but there are elements that kind of poke fun at Harry Potter, like because the idea is that in this version of the magical, the secret magical school is the premise, but in this version, their college, you don't start studying magic until you're a college student. So everything's a little bit more grown up, and there's like partying and stuff like that. But I just finished reading a part where instead of Quidditch, they've got a game called Welters, which the whole thing is the whole thing becomes really funny if you think of it as like a riposte to Quidditch, because it's like Welters is excruciatingly boring, and everybody hates it, and it's just like one more thing that they have to do. Unlike Quidditch, which everybody in the Harry Potter universe is totally gaga about. And there's like the finale of the final two teams of Welters players. It's like driving rain, and the only person in the stands is the dean of the college, who's the one that's forcing everybody to play Welters. And anyway, it's just really funny because it's like everything that kind of makes you think like, you're like, would wizards really be so gung-ho about sports? I mean, I just don't know. So anyway, The Magicians is a fun one for anybody who's looking for maybe to recapture some of that Harry Potter magic with more of an adult jokey twist to it. That's probably enough to say about what I'm reading. I'm reading some other stuff too, but what are you reading, Dan?
So I'm started the first book in the concluding series called The Fall of Shanara, the Black Elfstone. So this is the last series within a bigger series by Terry Brooks, who writes the Shanara series, which he's written books in that since like the 80s, I think. So this is the first of 4 books. And then when the last book, I think, comes out soon, or it's out now, then like he's done writing books in that kind of universe, because he's kind of that's all he's really written in. So I think he's probably ready to try something new. But I grew up reading them as a kid, and so it's kind of like a universe that I like. It's like one of my introductions to fantasy. But they're set in like millennias after like some sort of like post-apocalyptic event. So it's kind of in like a broken earth type of thing. So like in the early novels, they'll be like in remnants of like major cities that have now like fallen and become overgrown and stuff like that. So it's kind of fun, but it's all like fantasy. So there's like wizards and elves and magic and stuff. So
Shanara is a far future. I didn't realize Shanara was like a far future setting.
Yeah, it has like some far future elements to it. So yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike, are you reading anything?
Yeah, I'm always reading something. I've got this is my books I've read. I just finished. Usually I was really excited for the reading challenge stuff because I usually read science fiction, not exclusively, but mostly. But I just actually finished Outlawed by Anna Norton, which is a new book it's a alternative history Western. A couple of these I'm going to talk about mention deadly viruses. So that's maybe watch out, little trigger warning on those. But it comes through and wipes out a large part of the population in the American West in the 1800s. And at that point, then the fertility becomes maybe the most important thing. And women who do not produce children are shunned to some extent. And this follows a young girl has to leave home and joins up with a band of outlaws in the West and their exploits. And it was really good. That was a really good read. And then I just started Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. She wrote The Pisces a few years ago, and this is both of these books I have a feeling are going to be kind of magical realism, maybe a little bit farther into fantasy, but both are going to be pretty sexually explicit. They are not for everyone. The Pisces is about a postdoc student who is struggling to finish her thesis and is watching her sister's house, and one day sees a merman out on the shore and things ensue. So it's and I don't know exactly where Milk Fed is going, but I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
Awesome.
Cool.
So our So Michael Lang is here with us today, and he is the director of Talking Books. And would you like to introduce yourself a little more?
Yeah, I'm Michael Lang. I'm the director of the Kansas Talking Books Service. We're here in Emporia. We're actually located on the campus of VSU. I started here as a volunteer when Dan worked here. I was a volunteer narrator and he asked me to come in, so I started doing it there. Then I was working at the Council Grove Public Library and a position opened up, so I came up, and then this position opened up. So I've done a few things around the Talking Book Service, and I've been director for almost 5 years, maybe. That seems like a lot, but I think that's getting pretty close to true. So I read a lot of science fiction, a lot of horror, and that's a lot of those two things mostly.
So could you tell us like a little bit about Talking Books? Like, what is Talking Books?
Yeah.
What do you guys do?
The Talking Book Service is a library service for people who have a print disability. Here at Kansas Talking Books, we specifically serve people in Kansas with a print disability. So that can be blindness. We probably suffer a bit from the idea of we're books for the blind, full stop.
Mm-hmm.
But any visual impairment, physical impairment, or reading disability that prohibits somebody from reading a traditional print book, that individual would qualify for the Talking Book Service. And we're not just in Kansas. We administer a program that is a division of the Library of Congress. So every U.S. resident and every U.S. citizen living abroad has access to this program. But we distribute audiobooks in a specialized format, audiobooks and audio magazines. We do that in a couple of different ways. One of those is through the mail. We send out special players that play specific books. This is one of our players. It's a little black box with a handful of buttons: play, stop, fast forward. And then we mail out books in blue square cartridges or cases that contain a modified flash drive cartridge that my player's not turned on right this second, but slide it in. Shush. And you slide it in.
Freefall, a high-risk novel.
And you start playing your book. We do so magazines and books circulate that way. There are also Braille books and magazines for people who read Braille. We don't distribute the Braille, but we can hook people up with Braille reading materials if they want to. And then also we have a service that people can download their own books called Bard, which is the Braille and audio reading download service. So people can download books and magazines from their computer to play on this machine or directly to their smartphone, tablet. There's a mobile app for them to do that as well. So we provide books for people who need books. But anybody with a print disability that can get somebody to certify that they're eligible, we will serve you.
And we have applications here at the library, or we can get them for you. We can download them, and we can. Is it still the same where I could certify people, some people?
It is now, you can certify all people if you are confident. They just changed. It used to be where reading disabilities had to be signed off by a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But if a student were to bring you documentation, reading disabilities are now, just as of last week, on the same level of certification as all other disabilities.
Yeah.
And these can be permanent or temporary. So if you're fall off a bridge and break both arms, but still want to read, hold on to it until you're recovered and then send it on back. And all of this is free. I need to point that out. The mail service is free. The books are free. The Bard service is free. It's all free service to qualifying individuals.
Yeah, cool. Well, Pam commented, sent you guys some kudos. She said, wonderful service. When I worked for Kansas Soldiers Home at Fort Dodge, several of the veterans utilized this service.
Good.
Thank you. That's from Pam.
is the Bard, is it still kind of like the same, like the app still basically just looks like the player?
Yeah, I mean, it's been upgraded a little bit, and there's some subscription options in there now, like to subscribe to series, which will automatically be loaded to your wish list. There's been some updates, but the actual player interface of it mimics the player itself.
I think Bard just came out when I worked there.
Yeah, I think so too.
And it's really cool. I should preface, I also used to work at Kansas Talking Books. So, is there any new things happening at Kansas Talking Books? Because
Yes,
isn't this
there
your
are.
anniversary this week?
Oh, this is the anniversary of the signing of the law that established the services for the blind through the Library of Congress. So 90th birthday this year for what is now the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled. So if you go to the Library of Congress YouTube page tonight, they're going to be having a jazz concert from an individual whose name I don't remember, Matthew Whitaker, who's also a patron of the National Library Service. And he's going to be doing a free concert on the Library of Congress YouTube page. And we ourselves are rolling out a new circulation system that is going to allow all of our books to be available to everyone at all times. So as far as library users go, it's a dream come true, I think. We know we won't have to wait on people to return books to get people the books they want. It's gonna be awesome. So we're piloting that right now. We've got about out of like maybe 50 people testing it out for us, and we're getting ready to roll it out to more. It's going to be really, really exciting.
That's exciting. So since, when I was there, I did mainly audio book work. I recorded a few books with Michael. And so what makes audiobooks awesome? Like,
well, for people who can't read print, it's that they get to read.
Yeah.
And the other thing about it is we've got people who read print or who read Braille, people who read audio. We've got people who have enough vision that they can, if you do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, they can read print.
Mm-hmm.
But the opportunity to save that effort for something important like a contract or a bill versus your pleasure reading, I think is something that you really need to think about. The other thing is, for people who read Braille, audio is good just because it's more portable. If you're talking about press Braille books, they're huge. Oh, I don't have my magazine issues under my desk anymore, but an issue of a magazine comes in 3 volumes. So sometimes it's easier to just listen to it in audio, but digital Braille is going to make that much more, or it does make that much more portable too. And audio, right now, the National Library, NLS, does, they get a lot of their audio through commercial vendors now. So you're getting professional recordings, professional level audiobooks, just like you would at the public library. And the public library's audiobook collection is excellent. And we've got some books that they don't have. So take advantage of both of our collections for sure. Think of us as a supplemental collection to what the Newton Public Library or your public library is offering.
Oh. Do you have any questions, Sam?
Well, I watched actually, I watched your program on the history of Kansas Talking Books at the online KLA convention, and I found that really fascinating. I'm wondering, do you see a future where you eventually move to like an all digital distribution model, where maybe you've got like cellular enabled devices and you just zap the audiobooks straight onto people's devices that you provide for them?
I don't think the future of all digital delivery will happen, just because nationally the ability of everyone to connect to a digital delivery service doesn't exist. They're trying to serve people in Appalachia, where it's hard to get a signal, but they are developing services to do just that. This new service model that we're doing is kind of that stopgap measure. It's okay, we're going to be able to push whatever we want, but it's going to push to a cartridge and then out. So that is, I think, the next step. And I think every conference I go to, it's 5 to 7 years out.
Yeah, and I saw you've got these docks that you plug the cartridges in and they just like load 50 audiobooks or something like that onto them, right? That's pretty amazing.
Friday, if you get to our Facebook page, I'll be throwing up a video, like the actual step-by-step guided tour of it. So
cool, really cool. Yeah, and I think I know that we've connected some patrons with your services, and I know that some of them use both the local library and the Kansas Talking Books kind of complementary. So that's a great thing too.
for sure, yeah. Like, you don't have to just use us. Use your library. Use us if you can still read large print, but want some audio. Do both.
Yeah. Oh, and I guess does your service include any large print for people?
No, we don't circulate any large print. Audio out of here, and then we contract our Braille services to provide people with Braille.
Yeah. Really awesome.
And you guys, do you still record audiobooks too?
We do when we're right now. Our volunteer recording program is kind of, at a stopping point. We're still trying to get our magazines out, but we do record local interest magazines and local interest books, specifically for books, Kansas authors, Kansas interest, and the Kansas notable book list. We try to work through that, but we are now getting behind on that as we are now stopping recording for over close to a year at this point. But we do some Kansas magazines that we distribute as well.
Cool. All right. Is the newspaper reading service, is that through you as well?
The one that you're probably thinking of that uses volunteer readers is the Audio Reader Network, and that's out of Lawrence. But if you qualify for Talking Books, you qualify for Audio Reader and vice versa. But they do national and local newspapers and some magazines and some books that they distribute. You can either get a radio that you tune to it's tuned to a specific station. They put a lot of their things that are available online, or they have a telephone reader program where you can access the stuff by telephone. So they've got a lot of different ways to get current news through them. And again, that's all free through Audio Reader as well.
Neat. Hey, here's a question that maybe it kind of bridges the vision impaired and just general audiobook audience. I wonder what you hear from your patrons. Do they listen to audiobooks at the standard speed, or do they because I think Dana said that he sometimes listens on like 1.5 speed. So everybody talks like chipmunks.
1.25 speed if they talk.
1.25.
I know at this point I listen to mine sped up too. I think part of that's having tried to edit audio for so long. But I don't know what they use. I know people do it, and I know, like, if you ever use your voiceover app or your assistive technology stuff on your phone, they have a lot of our patrons have that turned up real fast, and it just and I can't keep up with what their phones are reading out to them, but they know exactly what they need to find, so they can just swipe as quickly through. We've got a speed button on this sucker. We've got a tone button. It can go pretty fast by the end of it. So they can do that on the player as well as on Bard.
Yeah. For me, I've always listened. I don't know. I just can't get past how unnatural it sounds. I always listen on 1.0.
Well, here, let's see. We can.
By Joanne Ross. DB 67316. Copyright the Ross Family Trust, 2008. Read by Aaron Jones. This book contains 300.
So you get a point where you get
this book contains markers allowing direct access to the acknowledgements and
diminishing returns on it, but.
Zach Tremaine returns to Swan Island, South Carolina.
But I do usually a couple of buttons up because it lets me read books faster. That's the main thing. I can add more books to my book that way.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'll add to this post, I'll add a link to your website so people can go there to learn more. And of course, yeah, like we've been saying, you can come in and sign up at Newton Public Library and we'll help you get connected with it if this is something that you or a family member are interested in.
For sure. And the application has been updated to reflect those reading disability changes. So if you get to our website, it should be all up to date and should be good to go.
Awesome.
Cool.
So
Well-
should we move on to the next item on our itinerary here?
Yeah, so our March reading challenge is read either or a science fiction novel or a science fact something, nonfiction, science nonfiction. So I think we've all got some suggestions, and I'll let whoever wants to go first go first.
I can start with my science fact one. The one that I'm reading,
Yeah.
my audiobook right now is my science. I am listening to All Hell Breaking Loose, The Pentagon's Perspective on Climate Change by Michael T. Clare. So it's very interesting as to the national conversation on climate change and the actions of the Pentagon and armed forces as they relate to those same types of issues and the language that they use in their reports. And so it's been really interesting. That's when I'm listening to a little faster because it is a little dry, but the information's fascinating. Talking about low-lying bases and what that happened, coastal bases and the future of those, the problems that they foresee with migration due to climate change and war elsewhere and instability in other regions due to climate change, and the mineral and oil rights in the Arctic as more and more Arctic Sea becomes accessible, and conflict that might cause. So there's a lot of information in there, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
Awesome. Well, I can do my science fact book. I picked The Simpsons and Their Mathematical Secrets. So this is actually, I believe actually this is like a class somewhere as well, but it basically talks about how The Simpsons and the other show Futurama have a lot of like science-based and math-based episodes that you don't realize are in there, and how like some of the problems that they pose in these shows are actually real math problems as well. So I thought that sounded kind of interesting. And I know for a fact there's an episode of Futurama where they make other dimensions on accident, and they actually have to like they speed up time, and then they have to come up with a math equation to like slow down time. And they actually had mathematicians, like they hired mathematicians to help write the episode. So like the math in it is like actual math. Like if you had to solve this problem, like here's the math to actually do it. So it seems like a really interesting book to read.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I can go ahead and I thought of a couple. I didn't bring them, but I thought of a couple science fact books. One is Lab Girl, which was actually our big read from a year ago, and I think that one's really good because it's a narrative nonfiction book, just kind of a memoir of, what was the scientist's name? I can't remember it now. The author of that book.
Is it Hope Jaharan?
Hope Jarans. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you reminded me. Hope Jarans. And in addition to just her own personal story, it kind of gives you some insight into the way scientists really think and the way the way their careers really work, you know, like, you know, they've, I guess they've got their worries and cares just like anybody else. You might think of a scientist as just kind of cloistered in their laboratory and they're undisturbed, just left to do their science in splendid isolation. But no, they're constantly applying for grants and worrying about funding and just like anybody else in that regard. But at the same time, there is this sense of mission and this sense of discovery that sounds like it makes it a really rewarding career. Oh, and then the other one was What If? I think we have it here by Randall Munroe.
Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah, he writes the XKCD webcomic, and the What If, it's kind of a coffee table book, and basically his readers sent in crazy questions like, what if gravity suddenly stopped working? What would happen? What would actually happen? You know, or what if you could lasso the moon and climb a rope all the way up to the moon? You know, so like he kind of like takes those, and then after you accept the absurd premise, he just uses science to try to explore quantitatively what would actually happen. And there's really fun illustrations and little jokes and stuff. So I think it's good for adults. It's also a good book to give to like a curious older, a teenager or a older preteen would be perfect. Yeah. So do we want to do another round and talk about our science fiction picks?
Sure.
Yeah.
Michael, you want to
Sure,
go
also.
again?
Yeah, I was just waiting for, I don't know, the protocol here. I've got a long list on my part here, but there are 2 series that have new books coming out in April. I believe that I love both of these series. The Murderbot series by Martha Wells, which is about a security robot that hacks into himself, becomes sentient, and wants to sit around and watch TV, but keeps getting bugged by humans to do security stuff. So the first 3 are novellas. They're pretty short. And then the 4th one was an actual novel. And I think this next one's a full novel. They're funny, they're violent, but they're all really good. The Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers, which starts with The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. It's a space opera, found family, space adventure, different aliens, different creatures. That's the first one's my favorite of the series so far, but I've enjoyed all 3 of them quite a bit. And then a series I just finished is Yesterday's Kin trilogy by Nancy Kress. And this is a virus trigger warning as well, but a alien race that looks a lot like humans show up on Earth and say, hey, there's a spore cloud coming towards Earth. We've got to find, it killed another spaceship of ours. We've got to find a cure for it. They've set up in this fantastic lab out in the Hudson Bay or out somewhere, and you get a lot of conflict as to who are they really? What do they actually want? Are they bringing the virus? What's this virus? And then travels through a few more books. So it's pretty intense, especially if you're virused out at this point. But I enjoyed that quite a bit. And then my last one that I'm going to throw out there, which I thought was really funny, and it's kind of like a noir meets science fiction, is The Big Sheep by Robert Kress, Kroese. And so it's a science fiction detective novel that I found pretty funny. And apparently it's part of a series, but I haven't read the second one. So those are some. I've got, like I said, a book full of books that I've read. I could go on for a long time.
All right. I'll go ahead and start next. I actually really want to read The Big Sheep. That's been on my list for a while to read.
I found it at the thrift store for $1. That's how I ended up finally getting to read it.
So I went and I grabbed a couple J books to start off with. So they're the Dave Pilkey books. So I have Ricky Ricotta's Mighty Robot series. And then of course Captain Underpants, because he's a superhero. So that's kind of science fiction-y, right? But if you haven't ever read Captain Underpants, they're hilarious, and they're great for younger kids who are learning to read chapter books. I picked a couple graphic novels, mainly to also highlight our Hoopla service. So I wanted to show off Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples here. And it's super awesome, kind of, what would you say, like space opera-y graphic novel that's set on this kind of alien universe where there are two different groups that are at war with each other, and it follows the two main characters who are both from different sides of the war, and they fall in love and have a child, and both armies start chasing after them because they are together, and all sorts of other crazy things happen, and it's very well done. And I believe we have all the current volumes of it at the library, but you can also read it on Hoopla, which is one of our digital lending services as well. I also picked, because I really liked the series when I read it a long time ago, Judge Dredd, which is set in 2099 in Mega City 1. And that's kind of like an urban decay graphic novel series where Judge Dredd is a police officer who stops the crime of the urban city that he lives in. And there's also a really great movie with Sylvester Stallone.
Was there a remake?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the remake's actually really more accurate to the graphic novels.
Okay.
It's really awesome too. I also picked Star Wars because I'm a big Star Wars nerd. So we have lots and lots of Star Wars books. So if you like the shows or the movies for Star Wars, I think you'll definitely enjoy the books. And then one book it's checked out that I wanted to mention because it's one of my favorite books is Relic by Douglas Preston. And I can't remember the secondary author's name now, and Lincoln Child. And it's kind of more of like a horror, science fiction, mystery kind of all jumbled into one, but it's takes place at the museum, the New York Museum of Natural History, and there is a man-eating monster running around the museum killing people, and it's up to the scientists in the museum and an FBI detective to figure out what the monster is and how to stop it before the big exhibit opens at the end of the book. So it's super fun, and well worth reading.
Yeah, cool. Great. Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dan and Michael as well. Yeah, there's quite a few that I mean to read, including the Murderbot, and I hadn't heard of the Big Sheep, so that's on my list now too. Well, let me see here. I got a pile of books here that I'm going to talk about and try to be expeditious about it. But I was just thinking. To me, I really kind of don't. Less and less do I draw a distinction between fantasy and science fiction, because it seems like a lot of the authors writing today don't really draw that distinction either. I mean, they kind of freely mix and match tropes from both of those subgenres. And I feel like the term speculative fiction is getting more popular as kind of a catch-all, which I guess there's various definitions, but to me, speculative fiction is any kind of fiction that says, what if the world was a different way than it is, or what if this happened, or what if the following things were true, and then kind of follow that. And you can really follow it in any direction. So I think that, any genre that you might like, you can find some science fiction that kind of crosses over into that genre. So on that note, I've got two books here by N.K. Jemisin. We've got two different series by her in the library. This one is called the Inheritance series, and this is the first volume, The 100,000 Kingdoms. And I guess that I would call this a fantasy novel. There's not really that much science fiction tropes to this one, but this one really is a crossover with the romance genre. I think that romance readers would like this. it's basically gods of this society with, the 100,000 kingdoms, and the gods have romance plot lines that play out basically. And it's kind of dramatic romance. I'm not sure that a lot of times with romance, like a happy ending is guaranteed, but I don't think that's the case with these. But I like this okay. What I really like by Jemison, I would say this is not so much a romance. This is kind of fantasy slash sci-fi. It sort of straddles the two, and it's the Broken Earth trilogy, and this is the first in the trilogy, the 5th season. And this actually kind of made history because each of the 3 volumes of this trilogy won the Hugo Award for Best Novel. And the Hugo is I'd say the most prestigious award for American science fiction that's given out every year. So you never had an author before her to win it 3 years in a row. And it's really, basically there's this, it's a sort of an alternate Earth where there's a group of people that have a special power to cause earthquakes and manipulate the Earth. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's just really powerful and kind of focuses on trauma. And it's really has a cumulative impact that's really great. And I think it's a really good piece of literature. Stanley Robinson is kind of more on the hard science fiction side, to throw in some more genre terms. His kind of ongoing project since at least the early 90s has been to keep up with the latest things that scientists are learning and discovering about both Earth and like Mars and space science, and then try to kind of spin things out like what might happen based on this. So there's the Red Mars Trilogy, which is a classic. This is one of his more recent ones, New York 2140. I think it came out 4 or 5 years ago. And it's kind of imagining like what might New York look like in the year 2140, given the way things are going with climate change. And if you look on the cover, you can see that New York has turned into a sort of Venice with skyscrapers. And I think he's a good storyteller too. Some people think that it's a little bit too much, a little bit dry, a little bit too much of an information dump. But
as far as Kim Stanley Robinson goes, that book is less of an info dump than a lot of his other stuff. Yeah. That one's a lot more, it's long, but it's more accessible than like The Year of Rice and Salt or some of those other ones.
I really like Galileo's Dream and Shaman. Those two are more story, less info dump. And they're also kind of historical fiction, a lot of fun. And I love the audiobook for Galileo's Dream, speaking of which. The narrator of that audiobook is just amazing. And actually, this was kind of interesting as an audiobook too, because each of the chapters is narrated by it tells the story of a different character, and they use different narrators for each character, which is pretty cool. So Michael, I'm sure you've heard of Neil Stevenson, right? He's one of my favorites. I never miss a new book by Neil Stevenson. And this one, I picked this one because it's a pretty thrilling one. I think basically the moon mysteriously shatters in the sky above Earth, and it's all about how humanity manages to survive as the moon falls to Earth. So I think that would be a good one to start with if you want to start reading Neil Stevenson. He's a lot of fun. Okay, Ursula Le Guin is fantasy and science fiction, great writer in both. I think that especially since her death, she's getting more and more recognition as not only a significant genre writer, but her literary significance. And I think this is my favorite Le Guin novel. It's really actually like Saga. It's a setting where you've got an Earth, a planet and a moon, and there are separate societies on both the planet and the moon, and it's about how they interact with each other. And so I would call this one kind of political science fiction. It's imagining what if our politics and political philosophies, it's kind of thought experiments about politics and society, and I often like those. And kind of in this, I'm trying not to talk too long about these because I realize I picked a lot of them. But kind of in the same vein of political science fiction, but even more so, is this book, Infomocracy by Malcolm Older, which is the first in a trilogy that she wrote. And I think you could call them political thrillers. This one's pretty exciting. They do get kind of heady, but it's just interesting. She's kind of imagining how we could reprogram democracy to take advantage of the digital age and what the results of that might be. And so if you really are into poli-sci or just thinking about political systems, this is a fun one. I'm getting down to the end here. Dexter Palmer, he's only written 2 novels, but well, actually 3 novels. I haven't read his first one, but this is really took me by surprise when I happened to pick it up. It's a time travel novel, but with a twist. And I don't want to give away the twist, but I've read quite a few time travel narratives, and I never read one quite like this. And I'd also say he's an amazing writer, and he clearly spent a long time working on and perfecting this book. I think he's one of those writers that, publishes a book once every 10 years, and it's just always really, really polished. So this is a rewarding one. And lastly, Piranesi. This is a newer one by Susanna Clark. Have you guys read this one, Michael? Or no? Okay. Well, she wrote Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is kind of an alternative history, historical novel set during the Napoleonic Wars. And that is, we have that one too, and that's a great read. It's a long one, but it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like, what if there were wizards that started intervening in the Napoleonic Wars? So
and there were footnotes.
And footnotes. Don't forget the footnotes. Yes, the footnotes are fun. So this is her long-awaited follow-up novel, and I mean, it doesn't have any footnotes, I don't think. No, there's no footnotes. And this is kind of it's an alternative world that's called the House, that is like an infinite expanse of statues and columns and staircases. And there's one person that lives in it, and you kind of it starts out as a fantasy novel. By the end, it's turned into a science fiction novel, which is always fun. And you kind of learn more and more about the mystery of this mysterious house. And it's a really lyrical and creative, I guess gateway fantasy is the genre term for that. So I guess you can tell from that probably that I'm a science fiction fan, and I think just like Michael, and I think Dan reads a mystery and thriller too, right, Dan? But you like science fiction.
Yeah, I don't read a lot of science fiction, but I pick them up every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're fun.
Yeah. Well, I think those are, I guess, all these books I highlighted I've read in the past 2 or 3 years. So it's and I'll put these on. I'm going to make a blog post with all of these picks, so you can check that out later, and maybe find some that you'd like to check out.
Yeah. Oh, we did have a question.
Yes. Oh.
Does the library have any Russian books appropriate for younger audiences? I would say I don't think we have any books in Russian, but if you get a hold of us, we can find some. I think that would be the easiest. If you would give us a call or send us an email, we can try and find some in the state.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, thank you all for watching, and I'll do my, if you have any science fiction books you like, let us know. And or if you want to see us cover a book related topic, leave us a comment as well. And we will
you need to sign up for Talking Books.
Yeah, don't forget, sign up for Talking Books.
Yeah, I would add also on the audio for all Kansans. Also, the state library has a great audiobook service that if you are an audiobook lover, We'll get you signed up with Libby, and that's our audiobooks, and Hoopla has audiobooks, and the state library has even more audiobooks. So if you have a smartphone or a tablet or just a computer to listen on, you can get tons of audiobook choices that way, in addition to the CDs and stuff we have at the library.
And we actually have a player, like a demo player at the library too, with some audiobooks on it that you can we can show you how it works and everything.
Oh, that's cool.
So, and we can sign you up. So stop on by if you're interested to know more about talking books.
Woo woo.
Yeah. All right. Well, Michael, thanks again. And I'll have to come visit you next time I'm in Emporia.
Yeah.
Come down.
Yeah.
We like tours, and things are going to be changing, so it'll be interesting to see the change as it takes place with this new system. It's really exciting.
Maybe when you're recording books again, I'll come down and record some kids' books.
All right. Sounds great.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.